Your fury thrills me, fills me with amusement and desire. Come now, priest, rake my face with your nails, gouge and tear my skin. If you hate me as you say, then take out my eyes and rip my hair. Burn them on your fire. Show me you have passion, priest. Show me you feel fear. I can read your every anxiety, for you are no warrior to fight me. Even now, your stuttering spirit edges to the throne of my master. The champions of Slaanesh are every bit as decadent as their cultist kin in the south, nimble and fast duelists that slither through enemy blows like a striking viper. These individuals exult in their transforming bodies, wearing armor that accentuates the most grotesque of their changes. Despite their grotesque appearance, they retain something of their sensual qualities, and those who see them are equally repulsed as they are attracted. The senses of Slaaneshi champions are often greatly increased, and their minds are so fast to react that they fight in a blur which many enemies struggle to even see, let alone defend against. As such, Slaaneshi champions are often the greatest among swordsmen and duelists in the old world. Like all other Chaos champions, these individuals gather a warband to better serve Slaanesh. Instead of moving from battle to battle, they are content to exploit each other in foul orgies of flesh and fluid. Such gatherings can last for weeks, the members dying from exhaustion. They can only tear themselves away from their disgusting gatherings long enough to respond to an external threat. Woe be to the survivor of their attacks, for these bands see any captive as a new toy with which they act out their darkest fantasies. For countless millennia, these most debased servants of Slaanesh have seduced man, woman, and beast with their beauty, art, and by means of their incantations, conjurations, and accursed crafts. They revel in their perversity, taking unholy delight in all manner of abominable deeds. Yet, even the meanest of the Slaaneshi cannot simply be ignored as just debauched hedonists. The champions of the pleasure god are the most dangerous of all his mortal servants, both as warriors of appalling ruthlessness and demagogues of alarming skill. They spread their master's depravity amongst the foolish and unwary, promoting such extreme heresy and deviance as to be an affront to nature itself. Slaaneshi champions seem to almost always follow the same path. As they become more and more absorbed into their goals, they become increasingly distant from their followers. But this aloof persona only serves to fuel the blind adoration of the champion's followers, and it is not long before the most successful amongst them are worshipped as mortal avatars of their dark master's perfection. These champions are proud of the unwholesome gifts that Slaanesh bestows upon them, and bathe openly in the praise heaped on them by those they regard as lesser mortals. Once they have reached this point, I can see no salvation for these champions, whether they succeed in being raised to the position of demons, or whether they are cast down as spawn. They will never escape the will of their tempestuous master. Indeed, no one that receives the mark of a demon god can ever be saved, and they may never turn from the path of chaos. Their souls belong to their dark god, and they must stay to the path that he lays out for them, or perish and face an eternity of torment. There is no halfway point. For the most successful of Slaanesh's champions, there comes a point when they become so far removed from mortal concerns that all remnants of humanity are left behind. From then on, their entire existence focuses around their never-ending quest for the ultimate sensation and the fulfillment of their own selfish goals. Once elevated to, or perhaps trapped within this perspective, the champion will see all other creatures as subservient to his will, there to adore and obey him, or be destroyed. Next, and first on the list, the greatest of all his champions, the one who led the rape of Ulthuan. Arrogant mortal, I let you live once, so I might experience the sensation of defeat. Now I am engorged on 10,000 souls, and I am invincible. Beyond it, your soul will learn agony and ecstasy under the lash of the Dark Prince of Pleasure, once I send it to meet him. Nakari is the greatest keeper of secrets among the demonic legions of the Chaos God, Slaanesh. He has pursued a millennia-long vendetta against the descendants of Anarion and the High Elves of Ulthuan, following nearly 6 millennia of imprisonment within the Great Vortex in the wake of his second battle with the very first Phoenix King, Anarion. The Great Catastrophe. Nakari has long been considered the greatest keeper of secrets in service to the Dark Prince of Slaanesh, for it was he who led the rape of Ulthuan during the Great Catastrophe in the early days of the mortal world. During that great struggle, the first Elven Phoenix King Anarion faced Nakari and was also the first mortal to destroy the demon's physical form. The two confronted each other a second time during the Battle of the Isle of the Dead, and Anarion was once again victorious, resulting in the greater demon becoming imprisoned within the Great Vortex for more than 6 millennia. Nakari's Revenge. In the year 2173 IC, scarcely 10 years after Finubar the Seafarer ascended to the Phoenix throne of Ulthuan as the latest in the line of the High Elven Phoenix Kings, a black storm swept across that fair island continent. The seas boiled and the skies rained fire down upon the land. Many elves drowned in swollen rivers, were crushed beneath collapsing buildings, or incinerated by bolts of polychromatic lightning. Great was the ruin wrought on Ulthuan that night, but the worst was yet to befall the land. At the storm's height, the great waystone atop Mount Unterek was uprooted and hurled into the valley below. Before the broken shards of the monolith had come to rest, a cloud of chaos furies claw their way into the mortal world, tearing reality apart like wet paper. Moments later, a far more monstrous form forced its way through. The Keeper of Secrets, Nakari, was reborn into the mortal realm. The first town to feel the wrath of Nakari's horde was Toranan, a provincial holding in the valley beneath Unterek. The defenders fought back, but could not hope to prevail against that unholy fury. Furies dove and wheeled through the sky like misshapen bats, their shrill cries freezing the blood of all who heard them. Rage-maddened bloodletters and blood crushers hurled themselves again and again at the defenses, splintering wood and shattering stone, desperate to slay the high elves that cowered inside. Nakari waded through the bloodshed, and the elves scattered before his coming, all save Eanith, Lord of Toranan, and his household guard. They formed the wall of spears against the demon's onslaught, only to have their weapons splintered on his side, snapping Eanith's sword beneath the pincers of one massive claw. Nakari thrust his fist into the elf's chest. Closing his fingers about Eanith's heart, the demon tore the still pulsating organ from the high elf's noble body. Nakari brandished the heart briefly before the elf's dying eyes, bellowed in triumph, and swallowed it whole. Casting the limp corpse aside, the Keeper of Secrets turned his back on the ruins of Toranan and sought out his next victim. Scarcely had the echoes of bustle about Toranan ceased when Nakari struck once again, riding the tides of magical energy to instantly emerge on the other side of Ulthuan, scant leagues from Tor Ivres. Once again, the High Elves responded swiftly. Although sorely pressed, the defenders of the fortress were able to hold the demons at bay, while aid arrived from Kotik and the Tower of Hoeth. Nakari withdrew his forces at the battle's height, retreating into the Anuli Mountains. Over the next month, the pattern continued. Nakari struck at outposts in the Dragon Spine Mountains, Avalon, and many other provinces of Ulthuan. Indeed, few areas of the High Elven Realm remained unscathed. Yet each time Nakari would suddenly abandon the battle, often within minutes of achieving a devastating victory. With no end in sight, and Ulthuan in a state of terror, the Phoenix King ordered every seer in the realm to focus their powers of divination on ending the threat, lest the demon's dread presence befoul Ulthuan entirely. After much meditation, the cause behind the attacks became clear. With horror, the High Elven seers realized that this abyssal monstrosity was the very same being who had led the invasion of Ulthuan over 6,000 years before, slaughtering millions and shaking the Elven civilization to its core. The seers believed that Nakari had been reborn, a thing of vengeance, consumed with a need to settle old scores. As such, the incursions that had recently plagued Ulthuan were far from random. They were directed by the cruelest of motives. Nakari was carving his vengeance on the descendants of Anarian, bringing towns and fortresses to battle long enough to spirit his victims away to face the eternal torments of Slaanesh. Over the many thousands of years since the time of the first Phoenix King, Anarian the Defender, the hallowed bloodline had prospered. Not all the scions were of noble rank, and had little to connect them beyond their lineage. As such, their disappearance on battlefields where many hundreds of elves had been slain had gone unnoticed and unconsidered by all but kith and kin. The seers believed that almost all known scions of an Aryan's line had now been accounted for, either lost to Nakari's rage, or they were away from Ulthuan, and therefore, hopefully, safe for a time. The remaining heirs were twin princes, scarcely beyond childhood by the exacting standards of the elves. Their names were Tyrion and Teclis. Each carried an Aryan's mark, though in different ways. Tyrion had learned his lessons well, and already had both the skill and confidence of a warrior born. Teclis, though weak of body, had proved himself adept at the myriad magical arts. The princes were hurriedly summoned from their home in the Katik woodland and spirited away to the safest place in all of Ulthuan, the Shrine of Asuryan. There, an army, drawn from the finest troops the High Elves could field, would defend the princes against all possible peril. As divined, Nakari's attack came soon. Scarcely a day after the Shadow Warriors first brought reports of demons in the mountains of the Atane Peninsula, the Keeper of Secrets vanguard marched within sight of the shrine. As the demons advanced, Nakari sent intoxicating visions flowing over the walls of the shrine to bedevil the dreams of those within. Many elves succumbed to these illusions of desire and phantasms of fulfillment. Some fell into deep comas, never to awaken. Others threw aside armor and weapons, marching blindly into the demon hordes and being torn to shreds, or casting themselves from the cliffs to perish on the jagged rocks below. Within moments, the stony slopes of Asuryan's Isle were engulfed by Nakari's hordes. Demons darted and leapt across the jagged rocks, paying no heed to the clouds of arrows launched into their ranks from the shrine's walls. Lords of Change hurled bolts of sorcerous fire at the defenders, cawing with delight as elves twisted and burned in multi-hued flames. Flocks of furies swarmed across the defenders, plucking unfortunate high elves from the walls and casting them onto jagged rocks. Nurglings oozed their way through gratings and coverlets to tear and bite at the ankles of the defenders. Asuryan still watched over his shrine, however, and demonic flesh blackened and burned wherever it touched the walls and fortifications. Yet still, the horde came on. Through it all, the elves fought without hope, knowing that to yield was to deny the sacred trust of an Aryan. Along the walls, each strove without thought for his own life, hacking at demonettes and plague bearers until armor and stone were stained with demon blood. 100 unnamed heroes struggled and died that day. Archers from Ivres and sword masters from Hoeth fought alongside knights from Calador and Illyrion. Wherever the fighting was thickest, there stood the Phoenix Guard, striving as if to drive back the foe by their valor alone. Yet the demons cared not for their losses. Finally, the elves were undone, not by a lack of courage or skill, but by the timbers of the shrine's gate. Battered by sorcery and demonic might, the gate collapsed under the immense weight of a beast of Nurgle. The battle now devolved into a primal contest of survival. Groups of elves fought back to back as demons swirled and slaughtered their way through the shrine. Now, the balance of arms began to tilt in favor of the elves. The merest wound left demons vulnerable to the holy power of Asuryan's shrine, and the weakest of Nakari's horde were consumed by cleansing fire. Nakari stepped through the ruined gate and drank in the heady scent of fear and slaughter. No one could stand before him, and he strode swiftly through the chaos of battle, climbing the stair of eternity and into the innermost sanctum of the shrine of Asuryan, where his prey waited. At the last, only 20 Phoenix Guard stood between Nakari and the twin princes. Yet the High Elves did not yield. They fought bravely on stones already slippery with carnage, yet Nakari would not be denied vengeance. As one arm darted to block the guards' halberds, another gracefully disemboweled half a dozen opponents. Bolts of shriveling fire burst from Nakari's eyes to consume the rest of his foes. As the last desiccated corpse fell, the young Tyrion knew his defense and that of his twin fell solely in his hands. He mouthed a prayer to Asuryan, drew his sword, and went to meet his destiny. The promising warrior though he was, Tyrion was overmatched from the first. Nakari parried Tyrion's desperate thrusts with mocking ease. In lilting tones, he taunted the elf with every cheated blow. Yet Nakari had made one fatal misjudgment. So focused was he on Tyrion that the demon had all but forgotten Teclis's presence. As Tyrion was knocked sprawling by the sweep of a massive claw, Teclis unleashed an attack of his own. While Teclis did not have Tyrion's strength and vigor, his crippled frame harbored a mastery of the mystic arts. Now Teclis hammered at the demon with all the sorcerous fire he could muster. As the magical bolt struck, the creature was blasted clear off its feet. Nakari tumbled across the plinth where Asuryan's flame burned. One mighty arm passed through the eternal flame, and the demon screamed in agony. No ordinary flame could mark Nakari's hide, but against this, the sacred fire of Asuryan, the creator god and king of the elven pantheon, the demon had no defense. The fire coursed across the demon's body, burning ever fiercer as it spread. Nakari screamed as his skin blackened and crackled. Rising to his feet, Tyrion struck the demon again, and his sword took up the flame. Each new cut opened up fresh wounds, lancing the cleansing fire into the demon's core. Crippled with pain, Nakari was able to do little except stagger away from Tyrion's onslaught. With each stroke, the elf prince drove the demon toward the great arch that overlooked the Sea of Dreams. With a final scream, Nakari's monstrous bulk toppled through the arch and plummeted the thousands of feet into the sea below, where the waves swiftly stole the demon from sight. Tyrion and Teclis emerged from the sanctum to find the battle won. Demons could not easily endure in that holy place, and only Nakari's maddened will had sustained them even this long. When the Keeper of Secrets was lost to the sea, the power that sustained his demonic horde faded, and the demons were swiftly consumed by the power of Azulian, leaving only piles of blackened ash. As dusk fell, the High Elves celebrated their desperate victory and mourned their losses. Through it all, Tyrion and Teclis stood in silence. They knew their destinies had been forever altered, and that one day they would have to face Nakari again. Now onto his war gear. First, Wit-Stealer Sword. The Wit-Stealer Sword, wielded as Nakari's primary melee weapon, was forged by the will of Slaanesh to arm him for a battle against the bloodthirster Skarbrand. And the Lord of Slaanesh, Nakari is a master of the magical arts, taught by the Prince of Chaos. And to end things off, a few interesting notes on Nakari. Nakari was able to glean Malekith's thoughts despite the potent runes on the Witch King's helmet shielding him from such efforts. It is unclear if this is due to the Keeper of Secrets' sheer power, its nature, or if the greater demon was just that skilled at psychology and reading body language to tell such things by mundane forms of observation, even without the aid of magic. In the greater demon's eyes, Malekith is unusual among the elves, as he feels that every elf always needs to talk, to boast, to vaunt their pride. Elves are worse than humans in their way. Malekith, meanwhile, feels no such requirement to speak his thoughts to anyone, least of all a lackey. Nakari claims to have lain with Malekith's mother Morathi many times, in many forms, more than even the sorceress herself knows. When telling this to the Witch King, Nakari even insinuated that perhaps Malekith wasn't truly a Narian son, but his own. Whilst enslaved to Malekith, forced to take the form of a she-elf, Nakari said he was becoming more and more like Malekith, living, breathing, and claiming the realm of his birth was becoming an ever fainter memory. Anarion first defeated Nakari during the Battle of Corumel in present-day Illyrion. And to summon Nakari requires a specific sacrifice of virgins in a correct ritual manner. But even then, the greater demon often allows himself to be called only to destroy the impudent mortal who dared try to control him. The Masque of Slaanesh, known also as the Eternal Dancer, Accursed Maiden, and Darkling Deceiver, was once the most favored of all the demonettes. She danced for the joy of performance and wove enrapturing displays so dazzling that they could strike even immortal gods silent with awe. The dance's tempo changes as the story of Slaanesh progresses. In the dance of dreaming, where the slumbering prince waits to be born, the Masque and her chorus drift in sedentary and languid movements. Conversely, the Pageant of Pain, reenacting one of Slaanesh's great victories over Khorne, is a tableau of spasmodic movements that ends with the entranced cast tearing at each other's throats and eyes. Not all the dances are from the past. They are drawn from all points in time. The power of the Masque curse allows her to recreate events yet to come, from the caging of Loek and the purging with fire of Nurgle's garden, all the way up to the legendary Ran Kadanra, the final battle and twilight of the gods. Any who survive these manifestations have only the scantest memories of what truly occurred. They see only the ruin and death around them, and feel only the bone-weary agony of a body pushed beyond its limits. Meanwhile, and elsewhere, the Masque dances on. Yet, the Masque was undone when Slaanesh suffered his most terrible loss in the Great Game, maneuvered by Zinj into a war with Khorne and Nurgle that he could not hope to win. Thinking to ease Slaanesh's mind and ills, the Masque danced for her Dark Lord. Never before had she performed with such skill. She glided across that ballroom floor of broken dreams and sundered promises, each sensuous and graceful motion flowing effortlessly into the next. No mortal could have watched her dance that eve and remained unmoved. Yet Slaanesh was angry at his defeat, and his proud heart filled with the acrid pain of humiliation. As he watched the demonette dance her faultless dance, Slaanesh saw only a barbed jest at his expense, a subtle mockery aimed at his wounded pride. All at once, the Dark Prince could bear no more, and flew into a terrible rage. He laid a curse upon the Masque, condemning her to dance throughout eternity against her will, unable to rest her limbs or take the merest pause to savor other experiences. Her dances would now speak in testament of Slaanesh's glory, every motion a stylized rendition of one of the Dark Prince's great victories. His ire spent, Slaanesh turned his back upon the Masque and retired to his inner chambers, where the touch of his handmaidens could perhaps temporarily heal his great hurt. So has the Masque been doomed ever since. She dances across the mortal and immortal planes to music only she can hear, never able to rest. She is drawn to places of sensory excess, and is wont to appear before the high table at great feasts or during the closing act of a fine opera. Her golden mask flickers and changes as her dance progresses, taking the guise of the characters she portrays. Such is the power of the Masque curse that all nearby are drawn into her unholy pageant. Eternal demon or mortal man, all play their parts in her fluid pantomime as flawlessly as if they had been rehearsing for this moment all their lives. Sickly, sinful spectacles stand, shuffle, shamble, and saunter shamelessly in mine scandalized sight. I suggest a solution. Surely such sedition should sour and succumb to Sigvald, the salacious, scandalous, and sensational servant of Slaanesh, son of succubi, scion of sordid acts, and slayer of squalid sirs. See how I stroll, stride, swagger, and swirl, spin, slash, and stab at stupid, senseless scum. Soon they shall swoon, shall seek solace and death from sundry torments wrought on them by my strategic, severing, scintillating shower of shimmering strikes. Send for the sword, summon Sliver Slash. Sigvald the Magnificent, often called simply Prince Sigvald, and known as the Geld Prince and the Prince of the Decadent Host, is among the most infamous of Slaanesh's favoured champion in the old world, made legend by his prowess on the battlefield and his disturbing yet angelic beauty. Though he appears to be little more than 16 summers of age, Sigvald the Magnificent has blighted the world for over 300 years. The personification of beauty on the outside, but rot within, the Geld Prince rides at the head of an army of utterly devoted followers who would give their lives for him without a second thought. His elite bodyguard bear mirrored shields, so that Sigvald might bask in his own divine glory, and dozens of exotic females attend to his every whim and desire. Such are the depths of Sigvald's self-obsession that he will even call his retainers to attend him with their mirrors in the midst of battle, preening and murmuring compliments to himself as men plunge into battle and die all around him. Sigvald's baroque plate armor remains forever untarnished by age or the tiniest fleck of dirt, and warm perfumed air surrounds him even during the fiercest blizzard. The ground itself reshapes itself to let Sigvald pass, and his feet float an inch above the world's surface, so that his boots are never touched by the mud or gore of the battlefield. He has defeated warriors twice his size with a contemptuous flick of his rapier, for Sigvald the Magnificent is the chosen scion of Slaanesh, his every wish granted in exchange for an eternity of depravity. Sigvald was once the son of a powerful northern warlord king whose dark desires led him to carnal and unnatural acts. When a child was born from the union of the warlord and his own sister, the bastard infant was handsome indeed. His hair was like spun gold, and his skin was unblemished, save for a tiny horned birthmark on the back of his neck. At first, Sigvald's every wish was made manifest. However, the prince's excesses eventually grew too obscene even for his father, and when his fondness for human flesh was discovered, Sigvald was banished. The boy prince feigned dismay, but when his father retired for bed, he slew him with his own blade. The boy prince left the tribe, reasoning that a man of his caliber would thrive in the chaos ways. And thrive he did, but not through honest toil. Before the next dawn, the young warrior had a new patron in the form of Slaanesh. This all came to pass when Sigvald came upon a small valley nestled between a small mountain range, deep within the heart of the Chaos Ways. It is here that he found a serene and beautiful landscape, completely shielded from the horrors which rage across the northern hellscape. It was from here that Sigvald, in his desire for perfection, gave his soul to a demonic Slaaneshi entity known only as Belus Pul. In exchange for his patronage, Sigvald promised the demon that he would follow his dream and indulge himself in every kind of decadence, no matter how slight. With his soul sold to the demon, Sigvald was given the power he needed to acquire anything he so desired. Hundreds of years later, Sigvald the Magnificent marches to war at the head of an army of admiring followers. Any who the prince deems to be ugly, crude or irritating he has put to the blade, sometimes eradicating whole cities on a whim. Slaanesh spoils his adopted son as an indulgent father, and Sigvald's wild excesses only serve to elevate him further in the Dark Prince's favor. Jaded and capricious in the extreme, he ever strives to plumb new depths of cruelty in his conquests. He inspires fanatical devotion in his followers, for they know that in the aftermath of battle, they may sate their most unholy of lusts without restraint. Sigvald's Folly. It was the year 211 of the 11th Phoenix King. Having long felt aggrieved that the folk of Ulthuan were renowned for more fulsome and golden locks than he, Prince Sigvald took ship to the island, his goal to scalp every elf who crossed his path. With him travelled an army of blood-hungry chaos warriors, who cared not why Sigvald brought war to the high elven realm, so long as there was plunder to be taken and the glory of the dark gods to be earned. Princess Eldira, by now a general in her own right, led the counterattack. Initially unsure of the Chaos Horde's size, Eldira elected to harry the force as it headed inland. Charioteers were tasked with hunting down and eliminating Sigvald's scouts, whilst Shadow Warriors launched daring nighttime raids to destroy supplies, slay horses, and assassinate the Chaos Lord's lieutenants. At her direction, spells of concealment hid towns, waystones, and mansions from the oncoming foe. Harried and blinded, Sigvald's army was soon lost in the Kotik Highlands. Division soon set in amongst the Chaos ranks, for there was little plunder, and no glory at all in enduring the lethal pinpricks of the Shadow Warriors' attacks. Sigvald had to best ever more frequent challenges to his leadership, yet pride would not allow him to turn back or compromise his goals. Soon he had slain as many of his own lieutenants as had the Shadow Warriors who plagued his advance. It was in the midst of one such death duel, begun by a hulking brute named Dranak Gore-Drinker, that Eldira finally unleashed her attack. Pennons streaming, great spear formations of silver helms pierced the heart of the Chaos Army, slaying a great many of the Northmen before they could even form up. Even then, the Chaos Warriors could have prevailed, had Sigvald found it within himself to set aside his enmity with Gore-Drinker for a few hours. As it was, Sigvald's vain refusal to hold the death duel for such a trifling occurrence as an enemy attack cost his army dear. By the time night fell, the High Elves had won a crushing victory. Gore-Drinker had fallen to Sigvald's silver blade, and what little remained of the Chaos Army had scattered and fled. For his part, Sigvald simply wandered off in the final stages of the battle, hacking down any who tried to stop him. Gore-Drinker's spilled blood had reminded the prince of a particularly rancorous bottle of Bretonnian wine he had once sampled, and he was suddenly minded to wreak vengeance on its creators. And his war gear. First, his sword, Sliver Slash. Prince Sigvald's sword is forged from a sliver of Slaanesh's own blade. It moves like quicksilver, striking his foes down in a flurry of lightning-quick blows. And the Auric Armor. The Auric Armor is a sculpted suit of plate mail forged from ensorcelled gold. Tendrils of dark energy constantly caress the skin of the wearer, rejuvenating his flesh and closing his wounds with a tender touch. Come, take my hand. There is no wish of yours I cannot grant, no desire I cannot fulfill. Forget your gods, your family, your loved ones. What can they offer you? I can give you more than you ever dreamed of. I have such things to show you, such pleasures for you to taste. There is no love greater than mine. Come now, join me. It is such an easy step, such a short climb. Yes, that's it. Come to me, my champion. Stay forever. Azazel, Prince of Damnation and Captain of the Ecstatic Legion, is a powerful demon prince of the Chaos God, Slaanesh. When Azazel abandoned humanity and pledged his mortal soul to the service of Slaanesh, none can say, but it is rumored that in the distant past he followed Sigmar, the first Emperor. The legend says that he betrayed his liege lord and escaped to the northern ways, pledging loyalty to Slaanesh, the young Prince of Chaos. Azazel was greatly favored by his master, and rose quickly in his esteem. After slaying Arthar, the exalted champion of Khorne in single combat, Slaanesh turned his eyes upon Azazel and elevated him to demonhood, making him commander of the Prince of Chaos's demonic legions. Azazel was once a mortal man, born Geryon of the Unborogan tribe, the twin brother of Trinovantes and the younger sibling of Ravenna. At the brother's birth, a seer predicted that only one of the twins would know both the greatest pleasure and the greatest pain. When Trinovantes fell in battle with orcs during an expedition led by Sigmar, the king's son, Geryon, blamed Sigmar for issuing the orders that sent his twin brother to his death. Geryon had not been able to take part in the expedition because of a broken wrist inflicted in a brawl with one of Sigmar's sword brothers the day before. In spite of Sigmar's oath that Trinovantes had chosen to stand his ground and died bravely, Geryon was inconsolable and swore revenge against Sigmar. Under the guidance of a hag seer, Geryon pretended to forgive Sigmar and swore friendship and loyalty to him, and soon became a valued member of Sigmar's retinue, since his skill with a sword was unrivaled. Geryon himself grew so close to Sigmar that he began to feel conflicted, recognizing the nobility in Sigmar and his brethren, and beginning to doubt his oath to seek revenge. Nevertheless, 6 years after Trinovantes' death, when Sigmar was 21, Geryon struck, wounding him with a poisoned sword blade and running his own sister Ravenna, Sigmar's betrothed, through the belly. Geryon disappeared, and Sigmar hovered near death for several days before recovering from the poison. Making his way north as a fugitive, Geryon found asylum with the survivors of the Norsi who had been annihilated in battle with now King Sigmar and his allies. A sorcerer of the Norsi had foreseen the coming of one who would become a great champion of chaos, and anointed Geryon with a new name, Azazel. He is now a mighty champion of Slaanesh, having pledged his eternal loyalty to the Dark Prince and been granted demonhood in return. He has become the highest general of Slaanesh's armies and gained the ability to see into the very hearts and souls of mortals, revealing their hidden desires and most perverse pleasures. Few have ever managed to oppose Azazel, as most who set out to challenge him are convinced by his silver tongue to join the Prince of Chaos instead. Legends tell of Templars of Ulrich, zealous men who vowed before the flame of their god to bring down Azazel or die trying. Before they could land one blow on Slaanesh's demonic general, they had been reduced to gibbering imbeciles, slaves to the slightest whim of Azazel and his master. Another tale tells of a questing knight called Guido de Brion, who kneeled before the demon prince before he could issue his challenge and had his head cut off while not moving an inch, utterly convinced of the justification of the act. It is said that the beauty of Azazel is second only to his patron. But as irresistible as his beauty is, there is a deadly edge to it. Those who have gazed upon him never forget the sensual temptation his presence arouses. It is a beauty which evokes loathing, and a temptation that sickens the soul. Azazel's hair is long, jet black, and as fine as flax. 2 great lacquered horns crown his handsome brow. His eyes are full of innocence, and yet they are cruel, calculating, and without pity. His smooth skin is white, the color of the finest porcelain. His movements are graceful, his limbs long and delicate. In his right hand, he carries an enchanted blade that rives as if alive, and his left hand is a long, chitinous claw, delicate and yet deadly. His wings are of the purest white, their beauty unmatched by swans or other creations of nature. He soars over the battlefield, sometimes sweeping low to strike his foes, and yet his feet never touch the ground. Azazel dresses in robes made of the finest silks, and his body is bedecked with gorgeous jewels and shining gems. Azazel commands a legion of demons of his master, and under his command, the armies of the Prince of Chaos have enjoyed one blissful triumph after another. Most of their opponents give up the fight before it even begins, for few can bring themselves to harm such an enchanting and wondrous being as Azazel. He, on the other hand, has no such qualms. He sees into the very hearts and souls of men, and even their deepest desires and hidden passions are plain to him. With his silvery voice, Azazel whispers to his opponents, promising them all they have ever desired if they abandon the folly of opposing Slaanesh and embrace the mercy of the Prince of Chaos instead. And there are very few that can resist his temptations. All who know of him dread to face him in battle, for the cost of losing to Azazel is not only the death of the body, but the damnation of the soul as well. And to end things off, his war gear. Those who come face to face with the awesome presence of Azazel risk gambling with their very souls. Many who see him lose their free will and become incapable of opposing him. They are used as playthings by him until he grows bored and disposes of them as he sees fit. He possesses the Demon Blade, a demonic weapon fashioned for the use by the Prince of Damnation, a weapon that no armor can ever hope to deflect.